Hey there, you guys. Today we're going to be talking about 1031 exchange, that creative little tool that's only been around for 100 years, but somehow is still mysterious right after this. Welcome to Real Estate Divas. I'm Jer'Leigh Thompson with Texel Real Estate and Real Estate Reformation.
And I'm Kristin Gerst with Capricorn Mortgage.
And today we are talking about all things 1031 exchange. It's been kind of a hot topic as of late, really over the last year, mainly because of the change in administration and people thinking that, oh my gosh, it's going to go away. It's
Which
still
I love.
here.
Because, oh my gosh, it's going to go away and I've never used it. And do I really want to be using it?
There are huge advantages. I mean, it's a huge, really great tool for investors and to kind of up your game every time you go to sell with some fabulous perks that we're going to talk about today. So the biggest thing that people ask me all the time, they're like, 1031, what is that exactly? Can you explain that? Because, 1031 exchange, that tells you nothing. The name of it tells you nothing. So basically that's where you take one investment property, and when you go to sell that property, instead of just selling it and grabbing those capital gains, you're taking that property and taking all of those capital gains and putting it into another, so that you are postponing capital gains taxes. You don't have to pay taxes on that original sell as long as you're putting it into another property.
So here's the major question. How similar do those investments need to be? If it's just real estate, right? And so I've got a small apartment house. Well, obviously I want to get something bigger. So as long as I go larger than that, I can transfer all of that into.
That's the beauty of the 1031 exchange, is that it's an investment property, right? That's the only way that you can use the 1031 exchange is for investment property. And because it's real estate is like in kind. You have to use like in kind. So real estate, transferring it to another real estate deal, as long as it's an investment property, it's still the same. So you can have a fourplex and then decide, I want to do a retail strip center. It's real estate, so it's like in kind, and I can take that money and put it over here and then defer that capital gains tax.
Excellent. So, and it doesn't matter what type of real estate as long as it's a real estate investment.
Correct.
Well, that simplifies things.
Yeah. So, I mean, what's not to love with about that? Like it gives you more buying power is basically it. You can use the funds that typically when you go to sell a house or go to sell your investment property, those capital gains that you typically have to pay out, you get to keep and use it as capital for your next.
Okay, so instead of having to hold back some of those profits and send it to the government for taxes,
correct.
What you're saying is you can use all of that money then to go buy something else.
Exactly.
Can you take any of the profits off the table?
Yes. So there are partial 1031 exchanges, which we're not going into substantially today, but it is a possibility that you would just need to talk to your consultant about that 1031 exchange. Say, all of a sudden my kids got tuition due or something like that, or we've got some medical bills that I'm concerned about, and you decide to take out $50,000 or something like that, you would have to pay capital gains on whatever you're holding back.
Excellent.
So then the like-in-kind property, we touched on that. The tax law allows for your investment to continue to grow. So what they're saying there is that you can take this investment and you can do it once, you can do it twice, you can do it for infinity if you lived that long. But you can keep moving that to another property, to another property.
But this is a deferral.
Yes.
And deferring means that eventually,
when you go to sell something, eventually you will have to pay tax on it.
So if you eventually sell whatever investment it morphs into and you don't exchange it, you will have to pay tax on just that sale, not everything from behind.
Yeah, not everything, because then what would be the benefit, right?
Right.
They're hoping that you will continue to grow, because it has to be like in kind, and they want you to take all of that, and really what they're encouraging you to do is take all of that and invest in something bigger. so that you are
Constantly building wealth.
exactly, you're building wealth, but then when you finally go to sell it, then you're going to be paying more taxes on that on that
Bigger
$800,000 property than is better than the $200,000 property
Right.
you sold,
Right.
15 years ago. So that has been going on like I said, it's a 100-year program. It was came about in 1921 or whatever. So Congressional Joint Committee said that for 2020 to 2024, that it saves investors over $41 million. So, or $41 billion.
I was going to say, I'm like, $1 million.
That doesn't seem like that
not really
much.
a lot of money.
Yeah, billion. Sorry, there's a B there. There's a B there. So it's not new. It's been around forever. But for whatever reason, there just seems to be a lot of confusion about it.
Well, how difficult is it to do one? How many forms
there
do you have to fill out? Or do you have your accountant do it?
So there are certain forms and there are certain people you have to get involved. There's like a third party that has to be involved that has no part in the transaction, which means it's not your agent, it's not your broker, it's not the title company. It is a separate agent that has to get involved. But the 1031 is I lost my place. Okay, so 1031, there are restrictions. Once you go to sell it, you only have a certain amount of days to turn around and put an offer on something else.
How many days is that?
45 days. So 45 days from the moment of sale, you have to have your prospective new purchase under contract or at least designated, right? That is so that you're not using that money for other things. They want to see that you're actively pursuing another property. And I think that's the biggest barrier of entry, because sometimes you want to sell this, you need to sell it, you've got the right buyer, and you're trying to find that other property. And sometimes you just don't find it.
Right.
Or if you're in another state, there for a long time, there were tons. In fact, the first time I ever heard of a 1031 exchange is from the California buyers, because they were selling off their property, their little 3-1 bedroom for $1 million that they had been renting out, or 3-1 bathroom. And then they're coming here and they're like, what can I buy in Texas? Things are cheap, but they don't live here. And they don't know the market, and they don't know what to invest in. And so there's a process there.
Well, and also finding something, over $1 million then.
Well, and you can, as long as you're spending it all, those things can get split into a couple of properties.
And so we are looking at probably sales price to purchase price.
Yes.
And it has to be, at least
And
the
you can
purchase
buy
price has
over.
to be, right, you can buy over, you just can't buy under.
Unless you're doing a partial 1031.
Right. Okay.
So there's that you have to do. And then let's scroll up a little bit. The three major rules besides the total purchase price has to be the same purchase price or greater, equal to or greater, that we already discussed. The equity received on the sale must be used in the purchase.
Must be
on the new like and kind property. So
and if you want to retain any of that equity, then it becomes a partial 1031 exchange.
Correct.
But I'm assuming that has to all be documented, and you're going to have to pay taxes on
exactly
whatever you keep.
Exactly.
Okay. So why are people so afraid that this is going to go away? Why wouldn't the government want to continue this?
Well, so the Biden administration prior to election had said that there's going to be new tax laws. There's going to be, like you and I have talked about before, the inheritance, airships, all of these other things, that there's going to be there's going to be some taxes to try to create more of an equilibrium between the super wealthy and the have-nots. So there's trying to get that tax money gathered to delegate it other places. It was spoken about prior to, and then now he's been elected and in office, and it's still being spoken about, but nothing's happened. It's kind of the same. It's not exactly the same, but it's pretty close in my mind of every time somebody yells, they're taking our guns away.
Okay.
It's out there. There's probably going to be some reconstruction of it because it really has not been touched in years, but nothing's happened yet. But
Okay.
there was a mass rush.
Well, I know they're also talking about other things such as our Roth IRAs. And
Exactly.
again, though, it's hard to imagine punishing people who are building wealth, to.
Well, they're basically, it's not a punishment. It's a reconstruction. Times change, things, and over time you figure out what's not working, who's taking advantage of certain loopholes, who's not, who has the money to do this, to take advantage of those loopholes, who doesn't, and trying to put a stop gate there.
Well,
I mean, government's just like business in that sense.
But from your explanation of what the 1031 exchange is, it sounds like anybody could take advantage of it.
Oh, absolutely. Anybody can take advantage of it. I'm just talking about the biggest pushback it has been from very wealthy, because we're talking millions and millions of dollars being used in 1031 exchanges, versus somebody who's like, what the heck is a 1031 exchange? I've got investment properties.
So basically you're talking about super wealthy
Exactly.
individuals are educated on ways to save money and avoid taxation, whereas people with less means are ignorant to these.
Yeah, exactly.
So basically just do this because wealthy people do it.
Well, yeah, exactly. But like I said, it's not really something, if you only got a high school education and pre-internet, you didn't know any of this stuff.
Right.
I mean, kind of where you're from, who you know, and how you're brought up type of mentality.
Yeah.
But so all of these things are what goes into doing the 1031 exchange. Like we mentioned, the like in kind, it has to have the same amount of debt on the property, and then the period.
45 days, and then you've got, how long do you have to close on that property? 45 days to make an offer. What if they, you've made that offer on day 45? Is there a way to extend that at all?
There's very little wiggle room. So you don't want to wait till your 45th day to make that offer.
Right, because you need to have something accepted.
Really and truly, if you're going to make use of that 1031, you need to have your eyes on something.
Right.
Before you ever
Right.
complete the sale.
Right.
45 days in the real estate world is not that long, especially if you're talking about, if we're talking about commercial property, or we're talking about, something that takes a little bit more due diligence. 45 days doesn't cut it. But from the day that you have a contract, then you have to close within 180.
All right, so let's say that I am an ignorant new real estate investor. Who do I need to go to? Who do I call? Who do I find to do the 1031 exchange for me? How do I find them?
Personally, I would talk to my title company first, because there are...
Your title company?
I would talk to them.
That's easy.
Yeah, that's easy. Talk to your title company, see who they'd recommend, because they do 1031s all the time. Talk to your attorney if you have one, but title companies are the best place to start, because they have to work directly with the title companies in order to get all the documentation to oversee the transaction. So that's the easiest place. And as an investor, you use the title companies all the time.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. If you don't have one you use all the time, you should.
Well, and you might not. I mean, hopefully you do have some sort of real estate attorney, but a lot of, newer real estate
they don't.
investors, they're afraid to call their attorney on stuff. I call mine all the time and bother her. But I also have an accountant. Could my accountant help me out with this?
Yes, they could recommend somebody who's certified to do this. Your accountant couldn't do it for you, but you could definitely call them about it.
Okay.
And then they're going to be able to tell you, all right, here's the benefits. Obviously, they're going to know the tax benefits, but they could definitely be able to recommend somebody that could do that third party overseeing, collecting the documents, and making sure you're hitting all your deadlines.
All right, so now I have an interesting caveat on this.
Of course you do.
Spitballing here. What if you're an owner finance investor? So you've purchased this property and then you're selling it on terms, meaning that you're still making income from this investment, and this investment really hasn't gone away, but it has possibly changed from either rental or Maybe it was going to be a flip, and now it's an owner finance investment property.
Mm-hmm.
Is that technically triggering? It's not it's triggering any taxation.
I think that's an accountant question. I don't think I'm qualified for that.
I'm just saying, I could see that, if you were selling something on owner financing, maybe that doesn't qualify because it's still an investment property that you own. You're also not taxed 100% up front you're taxed on the interest that you collect.
Yes. Not the full sale of the property.
Right.
Correct. The other thing a lot of people don't understand is capital gains whenever it's your primary property. Can I do a 1031 exchange?
No.
Only investment properties.
No. Yeah.
So that is that we already discussed the whole Biden thing. The reason I brought this up is mainly because I had a conversation over the weekend and somebody asked me, hey, well, what about this 1031 thing? And I was like, well, that's probably because they're scared about the Biden administration, blah, blah, blah. But it really brought up, to the forefront of my brain of how many people out there don't understand what the 1031 is. Because I know, I went to probably 3 real estate classes when I first started hearing the buzzword of 1031 exchange. And I don't know, it seems so, even after those classes, it seems so convoluted.
It's, but primarily I don't sell a lot of real estate retail. Obviously I sell it owner finance if I'm going to sell it. So I rarely, I haven't even really thought about doing a 1031 exchange. I did maybe once or twice. Mm-hmm. I contemplated it, but I never made the qualifications because I didn't buy something fast enough. Couldn't find something fast enough to buy. I've got a bunch of, investors that I've talked to that do it regularly, but it's just kind of a pain.
It can be, but so can a lot of, flipping's a pain. So it's all about, once you know what that strategy looks like and you know how well it can work for you, because it really gives you about 30% more buying power. So if you're able to sell that $500,000 property and you get to keep all that to buy your $800,000 property.
Right. And you just move all of that money into the next one.
Yeah. So it's a huge tax advantage. It really is. Anyway, but that's really the nuts and bolts of it.
Is there any income restrictions?
No, there's no income restrictions on this.
Is there any ceiling on property value?
No. That's the one thing that the Biden administration had mentioned, is that the change would come in a ceiling of the property values that you could exchange. And so the first suggested ceiling was $500,000. Well, most transactions are over $500,000 when we're talking about real estate investors nationwide. So obviously, all of the investors and TAR, the Texas Association of Realtors, the National Association of Realtors, mortgage, all of these entities that manage these.
Is that $500,000 in profit or $500,000 in purchase price?
It was never even really, like I said, it was thrown out there. Nothing is hard and fast. It was just kind of a suggestion, which is still kind of sitting out there. But like I said, there's all these other people that have written up reports, sent it to the government, have written all of their senators, congressmen. And so they're lobbying against this because based on the numbers and based on what investors typically do, what the average of each transaction is, what the average of the 1031 exchange is. So they're out there lobbying against this. And we're talking about massive lobbying power. The National Association of Realtors is out there doing it. The mortgage industry is out there doing it. There's a ton commercial.
Right. But in a nutshell, if this is something you think you want to do and you want to save on your taxes, one, make sure you have your property kind of scoped out that you want to go after.
Absolutely.
Before you close on the sale of your property. 2, contact your title company and find a 1031 exchange expert, because you're going to have somebody who's certified to set it up for you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you have any other questions about the 1031, people try to make it way more complicated than it is. If you're afraid it's going away, well then hit me up. I'll sell that property for you and we'll find you another one. I mean, come on, let's go. But if you're not like I said, it's not anything that is from everything that's out there and everything that I've read. It has been looming, but it's one of those, I feel like it's a little bit more of a partisan looming thing than actuality or anything that's going to come to fruition immediately.
If at all.
And then there's that.
So get out there and do your 1031 exchanges.
Exactly. Do it. Well, I'm Jer'Leigh Thompson with Texel Real Estate and Real Estate Reformation. Thanks for tuning in. And this is
Kristin Gerst with Capricorn Mortgage Investments. I am looking to buy your owner finance mortgage notes. And make sure and subscribe to Real Estate Divas. Stick any questions you have in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.
Like and subscribe.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.